Good afternoon. I'm Brian Bacharis, and I'm this afternoon's moderator. I am a lifetime Evanstonian and a founding board member of CGE. I am delighted to welcome you to the Citizens for Greener Evanston's Earth Week for Everyone event. Citizens for Greener Evanston works to make Evanston a more environmentally just, sustainable, and resilient community. It's important to mention that this event is being recorded and will be available at a later date on CGE's website. I want to encourage you to contribute to the Q&A, not the chat, and for your responses at the end as time allows. This program is entitled Beyond Waste. There are 3 separate segments, and they will be presented sequentially. They are Full Spectrum Composting, featuring Mary Beth Schaye of Collective Resources and the founder of Collective Resources, Erlene Howard. The next one will be the Circular Economy, presented by Michelle Redfield. And following that will be Why Ecological is Economical, Reuse, Repurpose, Repair by Rachel Rosner, CGE's president. Erlene Howard is the founder and owner of Collective Resource Compost, a food scrap hauling company based in Evanston, Illinois. Erlene began her company in 2010 when she saw the opportunity to make composting easier for everyone and to help recover the resources inherent in food scraps. Collective Resource Compost has the current franchise agreement with the city of Evanston, which provides composting opportunities through their 5-gallon bucket and neighborhood tote programs. In Evanston and throughout Chicagoland, they have 2,500 residential and commercial customers. The company diverts nearly 20 tons from landfills each week and hopes to return pre-COVID diversion to 35 tons per week very soon. Her colleague, Mary Beth Schaye, is a zero waste consultant with Collective Resource Compost, a food scrap hauling company also based in Evanston. She's passionate about educating people about waste diversion and building community through sustainability. Her most recent work includes creating composting drop-off programs in 3 retail businesses in Evanston and creating an online environmental justice discussion group. Mary Beth serves as the We Compost Recognition Program Chair of the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition and participates in Evanston Township High School's Sustainability Committee. She's also trained as a climate reality leader. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you, ladies. Thank you so much for your time and your presentation today.
Thank you so much, Brian. I've been watching some of the presentations and it's all been so interesting and informative, and I'm looking forward to seeing the finished videos. Hello, everyone. Thank you for celebrating Earth Day with us, and congratulations to Citizens Greener Evanston on your 10 years of greening our community. I'm Erlene Howard. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the founder and owner of Collective Resource Compost, which I started 11 years ago. And here's my sidekick.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Schaye. I also use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a zero waste consultant, and I started working for Collective Resource Compost 10 years ago on Earth Day 2011. For our 10 to 12 minutes with you, we're going to tell you a little about us, talk about why it's important to compost,
go over all the ways that you could be composting in Evanston, talk about CARP, zero waste goals, and how we can get there.
and touch on how policy and advocacy are important parts of the process. Erlene, why did you start a composting business?
I really wanted to make composting easy so more people could do it. Now, after 11 years of being immersed in this process and its growth, I'm realizing how important it is for the planet and all its inhabitants to be able to compost. Mary Beth, can you tell us more about why composting is good for the planet?
Yes, to start with, it replicates what happens in nature. It gives nutrients back to our soil and makes the soil more robust so that it retains water better instead of running off into our sewers.
Seed germination is more successful in compost amended soil 80% more successful. When we're talking to kids, we tell them that it gives the soil superpower.
The composting process converts organic material into stable soil carbon. The result is carbon sequestration as well as production of a valuable fertilizer, a twofer. Diverting your food scraps creates more space in landfills so that there is room for the things we can't compost or recycle. Erlene, why doesn't organic material biodegrade and turn into compost at landfills? Why do we have to separate it out?
The landfill is not the right environment for them. They get covered in plastic and other trash, so they fester and create methane.
Wait, isn't methane a greenhouse gas?
It is, and much more potent than CO2. It's causing global warming and contributing to climate change.
So composting is a way of mitigating climate change?
Yes.
Cool. Are there other reasons to reduce landfill use?
Well, our trash needs to be hauled very far away, and the more we continue to use the landfills, it'll be further and further away. Composting is a more local solution. We want everyone to know all the possible ways that you could compost in Evanston. If you live in a house like I do, you have the most options. At my house, we fill up a 5-gallon bucket every week, even though there's only 2 of us. We cook a lot and juice. I'm also able to put food scraps along with my yard waste in my yard cart for 8 months a year. And I use that when I have overflow from having company or larger compostable items. If I didn't use the container swap and I only used my yard cart, I could use collective resource compost during the winter months for the Winter Gap program, like hundreds of other Evanstonians. I could do backyard composting or vermicomposting with worms indoors or bokashi fermentation. I also could participate in a composting program set up for members at my church, the Unitarian Church of Evanston. Before the pandemic, I was going there at least once a week and could easily bring bag food scraps to drop into a neighbor tote there. Or I could use one of the drop-off programs we have set up with our 3 retail customers in Evanston.
So if you live in a multi-unit building like I do, you still have a lot of options. I collect my compost in a canister on my kitchen counter, but I walk it across the street to add to the 32-gallon neighbor tote that my boyfriend's condo building has in their basement. I could have my own bucket at my apartment. Someone in the apartment building next to me is one of our customers, and I see their bucket appear in the same outdoor spot every 2 weeks. If I had my own bucket, I probably would only need a pickup every 4 weeks, since I do a lot of cooking and eating with my boyfriend across the street. I also just like sharing a tote and composting communally. If I didn't have that option, I'd get my friends and neighbors together to share a neighbor tote. Alternatively, I could vermicompost indoors. I could also use one of the drop-off locations at Village Farm Stand, Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse, and Backlot Coffee on Central.
Sometimes the solution is a combination. Anything that was once alive can go into your bucket, neighbor tote, or your yard cart. There are limits to what can be composted in your backyard bin or fed to worms. It's most important to divert all of your food waste.
Hey, Erlene, is composting yucky?
One of our customers recently said that climate change is even yuckier. We make composting as unyucky as possible by swapping out your full bucket and giving you a washed fresh one each time.
Why is the topic of waste so mysterious?
Well, the same answer applies to our food system. It's mysterious because we've become disconnected from it. The way to get connected again is to ask questions about where your food comes and where your waste goes. I have witnessed composting as an introduction to other sustainable practices like reducing single-use plastic or changing food buying habits to reduce food waste in each household.
We've also witnessed customers who start composting at home and then bring the idea to their workplaces, or learn about it at their workplace and then start doing it at home.
Yes, and this is also true for our faith communities that have composting programs and educate their congregants about sustainable efforts. I was able to see this firsthand from my own faith community. Collective Resource Compost now works with 15 faith communities that are doing a great job at spreading the green word about composting.
If you start composting with us, you become part of our community.
These are unusual times we're living in. We're not really talking a lot about zero waste events since we're still being discouraged from gathering indoors. We'll be happily returning to making outdoor zero waste events very soon. Just invite us to help you plan your next event.
Zero waste events are a great way to educate. There's something very tangible about seeing how little landfill waste is created. And zero waste events can be big or small, even just a family gathering.
We are grateful for the City of Evanston for creating the Climate Action and Resilience Plan, CARP, and feel that it's important to make sure that everyone knows about it.
Pages 15 and 16 are on Evanston's zero waste goals and initiatives. CARP can be a helpful tool when you want to introduce a composting program. The city is asking for all of our help in getting to zero waste by 2050 or sooner. The interim goals are 50% by 2025, 75% by 2035. How can you personally help us get there?
We have a few ideas. If you're currently only partially diverting, step it up. Get all of your food waste into a compost solution.
And if you're already diverting all of your food waste, think about how you can use your influence by encouraging others to join us.
Also, bring it to your workplace and house of worship and everywhere that you eat.
Right now in Evanston and most places, diverting your food waste is elective. There are some cities and states that have enacted food waste bans so that food waste is banned from the landfills.
That might sound scary, but these places, they usually have a graduated approach to beginning with the largest producers.
And there have been some very positive adjacent outcomes. Food donation has gone up and overall food waste has gone down.
Food waste bans are something to support. It will take each of us doing our part and for states and municipalities to create the new normal for food scrap diversion for composting.
Deerfield has just introduced a curbside composting program to all single-family homes. All households are given a food waste receptacle and are being educated to use it. It seems likely that they will move from encouraging use to enforcing food scrap diversion.
We are happy that our business is considered essential and did not need to skip a beat diverting food scraps through the pandemic. We love what we do and the customers who do it with us. Thank you.
The
Perfect
end.
timing, ladies. I want to thank you very much for your awesome presentation and in an unusual format for these different events I've seen so far. If you had to offer one call to action to people, what would that be?
I think we did offer a couple.
Well, let me just let me
Get the
tell you
food
this.
out of the landfill. Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much for providing us with this. And I want you to know that Collective Resource Compost has changed our life in our house for the last year and a half. We use less than a half a bag of trash in the bin every week. So thank you for that, ladies. So we're going to move to the next event. I wanted to, oops, my sheet here, and introduce again Michelle Redfield for her presentation, What is the Circular Economy? And Michelle currently serves as the City of Evanston's on the Cities of Evanston's Environment Board and leads the City of Evanston Zero Waste Working Group, a subcommittee of the Environment Board. Her team of volunteers conducts research, benchmarking, and analysis, providing results and recommendations for consideration in advancing the City of Evanston Zero Waste agenda and transitioning the city to a more circular economy. Michelle previously worked as the North American Director for Environment, Safety, Sustainability, and EHSS process improvement for Schneider Electric, directing the company's North American environmental and sustainability initiatives, leading environmental and safety programs that involved water reduction, waste management, zero waste landfill, CO2 neutrality, EHS data management, and environmental recognition. Thank you, Michelle.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction, Brian. And thank you to all the participants that are here today for taking the time out to learn a little bit more, to educate yourselves and learn about the circular economy. I think that, yep, the slides are coming up. If we could go to the agenda slide. I'm going to just cover a few topics in the next few minutes: circular economy, circular city, and Brian will be happy. I'll also talk about that call to action. So what is the circular economy, and why are we even talking about it? I think we all know that today we have a growing population. We've got increase in people's quality of life, increase in consumption, all in a finite planet. And so the circular economy is being talked about kind of as an approach to that. How can we continue to have, increased prosperity, increased consumption? We want everybody to have the same quality of life. How can we continue to do that while not continuing to degrade the planet? And that's where the circular economy model comes in. And basically it's just moving from that really traditional linear lifestyle and economic model of sort of take, make, waste, or take, make, recycle, into one that's more circular. And what does that mean? That means, well, instead of kind of like take, make, waste, take, make, use, we reuse, we repair, we refurbish, we remanufacture, we repurpose. So the two key components really to circular economy are keeping things in their useful life for as long as possible. And also one that's not as talked about is using less toxic, more natural, more renewable materials. For me, one of the easiest ways for me to kind of transition my thoughts from the traditional economy to the circular economy is thinking about moving from the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle, to many more R's, if you will. So refuse, redesign, repair, refurbish. So it's just about kind of broadening that whole concept and thinking in a more systematic way. So let's move to the next slide and talk a little bit about, we're talking about the economy. Oh, that's kind of uncomfortable and confusing. I want to just kind of dispel that whole, I'm not a finance person myself. I don't know a lot about how the economy works, but I do know I work for a business that businesses, they employ people. Businesses provide products that we use every day. And so businesses are key, and the economy is key to increased prosperity. And so what are the benefits around the economy and the business to this transition? And it's really kind of shifting from focusing on businesses making money and people making money through selling products, and shifting that into also making money, and perhaps more, through services. So I come from a company that for years had been working to migrate from, a clear revenue focus on just selling products to a revenue focus that is also on servicing and repairing and remanufacturing the products that they sold. When we talk about materials, raw materials, the circular economy is having some impacts there. Not only is it helping to reduce the cost of raw materials, but also in some cases, maybe just reducing the increase in cost of raw materials. And at the same time, generating a market for secondary materials. And so that provides more incentive for that reuse piece. In addition, there's innovation that comes through this kind of transition in land and productivity and soil health. And in the end, all that results in reduced CO2 emissions, which we know is good for the planet. So next, we'll talk a little bit about how the city fits into the circular economy. And we'll start by providing a few fun facts. So on the next slide, we see a view of kind of what a linear city looks like. And it's not kind of the city's fault. Really, the city's just made up of all the activities and inhabitants and businesses that reside within the borders. But, you know, they're typically fairly linear. And so just sharing some fun facts about, you know, how much waste is in cities and how much we consume. Right here, it's documented that roughly 70 to 75% of our natural resources are consumed in cities. That's a big number. Maybe not a surprise, but it's still a big number. Similarly, cities produce roughly 50% of the waste and account for about 60 to 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So again, maybe not a big surprise, but it's a big number. So circular cities, you know, moving cities towards circularity can have a huge impact on, you know, the circular economy and advancing the circular economy. A couple more things like so what does that mean? Like, you know, what is it to, you know, wasted resources, assets? You know, think about your car. I was shocked when I learned a couple of years ago or a few years ago that your car, or if you have one, a typical car is parked more than 90% of its lifetime. 30% of food is wasted. I think Erlene and Mary Beth talked a little bit about food waste. On average, offices pre-COVID are vacant 35 to 50% of the time. All this stuff happens inside cities, inside our cities. So on the next slide, what's the vision for a circular city? And I guess, you know, kind of first and foremost is central to a circular city is that it conserves and reuses resources and products and shares and increases the use of all assets, which in the end minimizes resource consumption and waste in all areas, whether it's electricity or water or stuff that we buy or food. So here's an example of, you know, how certain aspects of a city can be more circular. I'll just kind of mention a couple of them. You know, transportation and mobility. Really, like the vision of a circular city is we can have shared, clean, effective transport systems that are powered by renewable energy. That's really circular. If we talk about a bioeconomy, that's where we can foster and develop and ensure that these organic wastes that were just being talked about are byproducts that are recovered and then returned back to the soil as nutrients. So very circular, right? We take it out, we use it, we return it. Circular cities are regenerative and resilient to climate change. And another example is buildings. Buildings can be used much more intensively than they are now by employing different sorts of working practices. So that's kind of a big picture vision of what a circular city is. Next, we'll kind of talk about, so what can I do? What does all this mean to me, you say? I'm getting a glimpse of what the circular economy is, and it sounds like a good thing. Well, we can all help to move Evanston to a circular and even a regenerative future. We can work to help gobble up more CO2 than we're emitting. We can produce everything renewably. We can work to achieve that zero waste community and that zero carbon neutral community. And how do we do that? On the next page, I have some kind of action items, if you will, but something I didn't write on here that I thought about as I was preparing for today is really keys are what we're doing now. Let's make sure that we are educated, we educate ourselves, and that we share and we help to educate others as well. Because an informed and energized citizenry is what we need in Evanston to draw down our impacts on climate change and advance the circular economy. What can we do? Like, what actions can we do in addition to that is remember about that. Like, it's not just 3 R's anymore, it's 5 or 6 or 7 R's. How do we really live our lives in a way that isn't kind of a take, make, waste way? And support Evanston circular business and other, nearby localities. There are so many out there. It's really unbelievable. I didn't want to write any specific names here. Probably you know some of them, but there are ones that are for fixing electronics, fixing shoes, fixing clothing, selling used books, selling used athletic equipment, compost and mulch materials. So support those circular businesses. And then on that other side, on that toxicity piece, purchase and use less toxic materials and energy. It's easy, really. I mean, do you really need all those chemicals under your sink, or would vinegar and water do it for you? And then also really importantly, we heard Mary Beth talk about the CARP, the Climate Action and Resilience Plan that the city has. And the city, all the different departments and offices in the city are doing a lot of work to try to advance programs and initiatives for CARP. But sometimes it's hard to get the attention of all of our politicians and get them through the city processes. And so it's important to make sure that we do reach out to our alder people, the city manager, our mayor, and let them know that these things are really important to us, that they're important to the sustainability of our city, and that without them, how resilient can Evanston be without employing these circular approaches? So be sure to, just do what you can do within your own time, your own resources. And in that way, we can all work together towards a circular economy in Evanston. That was my call to action, Brian. You're on mute, Brian. Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much for that. That was a great presentation. I'm going to be calling on you to present that again to other groups in town, if you don't mind.
Oh, I'd love to. I'm very passionate about it.
And you were ahead of the schedule, so thank you for that too. We've got Q&A working again, audience. So if you need to if you have a question, please submit it. We will be covering it at the end of the next presentation, which we will begin without further ado. Rachel Rosner, our president, is going to present, also, by the way, she's too humble to admit it, she's also the co-chair of the Earth Week for Everyone committee. Thank you for that too, Rachel. Why Ecological is Economical, Reuse, Repurpose, Repair by Rachel Rosner. Rachel is a longtime Evanston resident and president of Citizens for Greener Evanston. Her background is in education and her passion is in connecting young people with nature and empowering youth activists. A climate reality mentor and a leadership Evanston alum, Rachel is focused on the intersection between anti-racism and sustainability. Take it away, Rachel. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Brian. This is very fun to be part of this whole thing with colleagues and friends here. And in some ways, what I'm going to say is taking Michelle's brilliant presentation to that kind of practical Evanston-based space. But as president of Citizens Greener Evanston, I've been very focused on how we can be as inclusive as possible. And I've been in conversations where I've learned that some people even hear the word green and think that's for Teslas, Whole Foods, solar panels on your house. And I really think that's ironic because in reality, right, my 2007 Prius might be, driving that into the ground might be a greener choice than getting a brand new electric car. All due respect to those of you who have brand new electric cars though, because that's fun. or having a 2-bedroom apartment might require less energy than a huge house with solar panels, right? So it's an equation. The upshot, though, is that buying less stuff, as we're hearing about, and making do with what we've got are the most sustainable choices we can make. If your parents or grandparents grew up in the Depression or World War II, you know about making do, making the most out of what we've got. I actually have my toaster here. I use a chopstick to pull the thing up and down. And I know maybe some of my friends feel sorry for me, but I feel like I'm not going to rush out to Target or Amazon and order another toaster, because this one toasts my bagels perfectly fine. And in my utopia, everybody has something that's a little bit MacGyvered like that, so that there's no need to just go out and buy new stuff, right? I think maybe baby boomers swung the pendulum the opposite way from the parents and grandparents that were making do, and we found ourselves in this extreme consumer culture. George Bush told us to go shopping after 9/11. Like, it's patriotic, but it's not sustainable, right? I know that for many, like, thrifting or wearing mended garments carries a stigma, and that is part of this consumer culture, that everything needs to be shiny and new. And it's a throwaway culture as well, and that's what we need to shift. So I have made a few slides here. I haven't been using, just a moment, thank you, slides in these presentations so far. Here we go. And thank you for your patience. Here we go. And why is my brain not seeing present up there? I'm just going to go like this right here. You guys can see all my slides while I'm talking. Yeah, why cheap is green is a more colloquial way of saying why economical is ecological. Some of those re's that Michelle was talking about, I wanted to emphasize, as I've learned from Mary Beth, it's a hierarchy, right? So it's important to think of it that way. I think a lot of people feel like they can go straight to recycle and feel good about themselves, which yay, but start with not getting stuff you don't need. And now I'm going to zoom in on some of the other re's that fall under reduce and reuse, which Michelle mentioned as well, but repair, repurpose, resale, and reappropriate. And again, sort of taking that to the, so, you know, obviously fixing things we've talked about. Repurposing has so many possibilities, and there are so many resources. I think maybe Mary Beth can even tell you some things to follow on Instagram for creative reuse opportunities. And I am personally a master thrifter, and people actually do ask me around town, like, where do you go for this or that? So I thought I would go ahead and share some of those resources with you. And reappropriate, I've actually just been reading that beautiful book, slipped my mind. Anyway, by an Indigenous woman. She talks about the gift economy. And my daughter's out in Berkeley right now, and she's so excited about how people just leave piles of cute clothes on the curb. It's like manna. And, you know, these little free libraries that you see around are that concept is expanding, where people are putting out toys and other goodies. So I would love to see more and more of that. So, in addition to buying resale, you can double the good you do by supporting Black-owned businesses like Stepping Out on Faith, which is downtown Evanston. Classy Closet by the Metro has really cute clothes. And the Crowded Closet, the owners just gifted it to the YW, so that 60%, it's a consignment shop, but 60% of the money goes to helping support women victims of domestic violence there. So, and also it's very well organized and curated, because I know not everybody's up for the deep dig. Likewise, the Junior League helps people on their job searches by giving free clothes. And then we have our Goodwill, and I have a few more to share. Secret Treasures on Dempster Dawn is amazing, and that's where you can get dishes and other kitchen items, and it's a great place to buy presents. Squeeze Box right here on Main Street, books and records, and also a lovely local business to support. Crossroads, that's more, you know, your mainstream chain, but still circular economy. And the Brown Elephant, there's one in Andersonville and one in Lincoln Park, and they support Howard Brown Health and also kind of a fabulous curated selection. Now you know my secrets. That repair piece, I just want to emphasize, Lemoy Hardware is your friend, and they can point you to people who can fix anything, and they fix a surprising number of things in the store as well, or they can teach you how. Stitchworks, I think that's a typo. I think it might be one word, on near me, right across from Squeezebox. They teach visible mending classes, which I love that idea of kind of celebrating that you sewed something up, but you're still wearing it and it's still cute. And Virag Jeweler is able to fix anything jewelry. And the Repair Clinic, which is Bea Echeverria, who's on the board of CGE. She is the head of Beyond Waste and started this amazing program it was housed most recently at YOU, and she would get community volunteers to help community members and teach them how to fix anything from bikes to blouses, furniture, electronics, and surprisingly easy to like fix your phone screen. She always goes on about that one. And they're going to reopen perhaps an outdoor space around the library because she's working at the library now, so that's exciting. Other resources, thank you. Clothing swaps, which Mary Beth and I have each hosted and been to each other's, and they have been really successful and fun and not hard. You know, you got to clear a little space, invite friends to bring clothes, but I think swap is a misnomer because you can certainly show up empty-handed, and you usually don't want people to leave empty-handed because there's a lot of clothes in Evanston, it turns out. And I think that's like a fun social one. My fantasy in the new culture is that this is really mainstream, and maybe even the city supports it, and that we have a clothing swap at Robert Crown, or it becomes a real major initiative. Yard sales, of course, and social media has a lot of opportunities. I mean, you can buy things, right? Obviously on Craigslist. So there's also Free Stuff Evanston online yard sale, and Back on Their Feet Evanston. That's more about that reappropriating piece. When you're looking to get rid of stuff, I think that's especially furniture, and that's for people who could really use a hand, and it's a really successful one. Next Door for borrowing and sharing tools. And I want to really emphasize, I think our culture has kind of moved away from feeling like you can knock on your neighbor's door and say, can I borrow your whatever, and in reality that fosters community and relationships. And I want to encourage you to get out and do it, borrow. But meanwhile, Bea's next big dream, which I think is in the works, is a tool library where, there will be a set of essential tools that folks can check out as they need them. So, everybody does not have to own every single gadget. That's my, another arena for where cheap is green is around food. And Project Drawdown is a group of scientists that have ranked the top climate solutions. Reducing food waste is number 3 on their list. Erlene and Mary Beth mentioned how composting helps with address the climate crisis. But even before you get to composting, it's just eating everything or using up what you've got, right? And I feel like COVID has been really helpful in getting many people to be more creative with what's in their fridge, and I invite you to put in the chat if you have any great recipes that have emerged from COVID, I don't know. For me, it's like anything can be a frittata, a taco, go on pasta, or be soup, right? However you. So I've gotten really creative, and I actually had a fun conversation with Alderman Simmons on this topic. She's also gotten really creative. And then I just saw a funny piece in the New Yorker about, I call it scrounge night. They call it fending, that night when you're just pulling everything out of the fridge and eating leftovers, and you may not all be eating the same thing. And the person who made the New Yorker cartoon, they would still have a glass of wine, even though they and their partner might not be eating the same thing. Well, there's Brian, and I am now finished. That's all I have to say.
Well,
All right.
thank you for that, Rachel. I want you to know that I'm wearing my $3 vest from the cupboard in downtown Watoma, Wisconsin. And we're
You know,
big
that gives
fans.
you a lot of status with me, Brian.
We're big fans of that. Beyond that, I want you to put the finger on me for when it's time to populate the tool library, because I have lots of
Oh, yeah.
duplicate tools and I'm a tool guy. That was fabulous. And we've got everybody together, I think, on the screen, and we've got only one Q&A question. We had a little technical difficulty, which we apologize for. It's been solved. So if you've got any questions right now, pop them into the Q&A and we'll try to get to them before time runs out. We've got a good chunk of time here before we're moving on to our next event. And Kristen asks, Michelle, are there any examples of circular cities today, or of cities that are further along in the continuum of circularity? Great question.
It is a really great question, Kristen, and I'll use this moment as a recruiting moment as well. It's one of the things that the Zero Waste Working Group is focusing right now, actually, is doing some benchmarking. And we've identified 10 communities that we would like to benchmark around the circular economy and circular city approaches to, and then present those results to Evanston. But absolutely, there are lots of cities that are further along, fewer in the US, more in Europe, more kind of in the Nordic countries. But for sure, Toronto has an amazing circular city plan. The city of Charlotte does. I think Berkeley may. So Evanston is not lagging, I would say, but we're not necessarily like at the leader position, but we're kind of fast. We're kind of a fast follower, I would say, as far as looking into circular economy approaches and how can we become more of a circular city. And my recruiting thing is, if anybody is interested in learning more about this, helping out with our benchmarking effort would be a great way to learn more. And we would love to have more volunteers to help us with our benchmarking effort and participate in our Zero Waste Working Group. So feel free to reach out to me via CGE. I'm not currently in the CGE staff. I'm working with the Environment Board, but I would love to have some more volunteers supporting the Zero Waste Working Group.
We'll get you sooner or later, Michelle.
Yay.
There really is not a CGE staff, just to be.
All volunteers.
Yeah.
We have another question from C. Michelini to Erlene. I live by myself and I would love to compost, but don't generate a lot of food waste. What does your firm offer to people like me?
Yeah, so there's like plenty of options. If you live in a multi-unit building, you might want to try and get your neighbors involved. Our neighbor tote program is very inexpensive. It turns out to be less than $1 per person per week. So that's a really inexpensive option. Also, I would recommend gathering your food scraps in a container that works for you. And for up to 5 gallons, you can take it to one of the drop-off locations, which is the Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse and the Village Farm Stand on Dempster, and Backlot Coffee on Central Street.
Erlene, is there a fee for that?
There is a fee. It's $5 up to 5 gallons. So, you know, you can make a decision about how often you want to go. Generally, a single person fills a 5-gallon bucket in about 4 weeks. Depends on how much you cook.
We have another question related to composting. Rats. What advice would you give to backyard composters who are concerned about rats?
Yeah, so you really need to use an enclosed container. Either buy a yard composter to put the material in, or build a bin that has chicken wire around it and keep it covered. In general, if you're turning the pile regularly, there isn't going to be any place for the rats to hang out. They have a tendency to burrow if you let your pile go stagnant, and they have the ability to get into it. But in general, one of the reasons that Evanston, the city of Evanston, went with the container swap model is they were really looking for an option to reduce any rodent interaction. And we do not have a rat problem with the totes or the 5-gallon buckets. So we really do help manage that whole city of Evanston rat issue that everybody's working on.
Well, and as your tool guy, who has built a couple of composting bins for friends and family, don't use chicken wire. Use something called hardware cloth. It's 1/4-inch checks of very robust galvanized metal screening, and it's much stronger, and they have a bigger time because they can squeeze through an inch, and that's what chicken wire is. So there's just a little advice there. We're doing really good on time. Are there any other, it looks like another question may have popped up here. An anonymous attendee wants to know, what are the pros and cons of bokashi composting?
Yeah, so it really falls into one of the more labor intensive. So you would be collecting your material in a canister and adding enzymes to it until the canister is full, and then you need to dig a hole in your backyard to put the material in for it to finish composting. So so like vermiculture, which is probably the other most labor intensive, it definitely takes some work.
Well, I see we've got 2 more minutes before we have to terminate here and move on to prepare for the next event. But I see a couple of chat items. Please.
Oh, I was just going to say, so, I mean, I heard earlier, Liam from the city, the sustainability fellow, talked about increasing, programming with a collective resource. Can you say more about that and kind of what citizens can do to push the city into action?
Yeah, so I have not exactly heard what the city's plans are, but obviously it is in Illinois, and the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition, we're all trying to work at getting solutions that everybody's composting. So I think it's a tiered approach, but they haven't given me all the details. So I am open, I'm here, we're ready. So give us your food scraps.
And I will say one more plug. It really changed our lives and our solid waste situation at our home in Southeast Evanston. We fill up our 5-gallon bucket every 2 weeks, and sometimes we have a little overflow and we squish it down. So thank you for that.
Just a reminder from the circular economy person that the greenest food scrap is the food scrap that is not generated. So let's remember that we want to reduce first.
Buy what you eat and eat what you buy.
Exactly.
There you go. Thank you all for your presentation today, and thank you, audience, for attending this wonderful event. And